When my mother was struggling to find help for me as a young man, there was nobody who understood our problems and I could relate to. So after many failed attempts, I ended up in prison. My mother's sense of failure, shame, and stress were real. The worst part was she went through it alone. She was alone in trying to keep me out of prison. She was alone in navigating the prison system. And she was also alone trying to help me re-enter post my release. The Cafe of Hope was created so you don't have to go this journey alone. I know firsthand by real experiences what you're facing and you're feeling. We are here for you. I wish I could have created the Cafe of Hope for my mother back when she needed it, but I guess it was meant for us to go through this test so we can bring you our testimony. Thank you for allowing us to help support your family. Welcome back to the Cafe of Hope. I'm your host, Andre Norman, and again, it's always been a wonderful journey to be here. I appreciate you allowing me into your home and you sharing this time with me. Today, we want to talk about something that's really important. We've been through a lot of testimonies and situations and experiences of people going in and out of jail and getting to the point. But we want to focus on it's time to come home. You've gotten word that you've gotten parole. They've given word that their time's almost up. They're about anywhere between 6 months to a year between being released. And what do you do now? The question is, what do you do now? Other than celebrating and being happy, we have to come up with a complete action plan to help you transition from inside to outside. The thing that we always miss and we don't focus on, every state has a stat. It's called a recidivism stat. That is a number that tells you how many people go back to prison after their release. The national average is between 60 and 70% of people. That means 6 out of every 10 people who come home go back to prison. They're going back to prison not because they want to be there, not because you want them to be there. They're not prepared to be home. So this is important that we focus on how do we prepare them and prepare ourselves for the transition so it's a one-time deal. It's imperative that we actually get this correct now. We don't want to further these stats and enhance these stats by being not diligent in our efforts of helping people come home. So, okay, this is the scenario. Your loved one just got notified, their time is almost up. What do we do? What do you do? I need you to ask yourself, what are you doing? Making sure they got an apartment, making sure they got some new clothes, all that stuff is great. All that stuff is nice, but it has very little to do with them staying home. So we need to get a fundamental plan on what does it look like and what's necessary to keep them on the other side of the wall. So you need to start having conversations with them about how they really did their time. In prison, there's people who spend their entire time inside scared. They're worried about being assaulted, they're worried about being raped, they're worried about being robbed. They're just under extreme pressure every single day that they're there, hoping that today's not my day, hoping that this isn't the day that it happens to me. And to spend 10 years under the fear of being harmed or hurt is tough. That's a lot of trauma to be set on somebody. And when they come home, you can't see that trauma. Let me explain to you about trauma. Trauma is invisible to the eye. Unless you're a trained psychologist and a clinical clinician, you're not going to be able to see the warning signs of trauma. And they're not going to share this type of information with you. You need to have a sit down with your loved one and have a clear conversation about what have they really been through, not to be in their business, but to be in a space of being helpful and supportive in their transition. If they've been beaten, if they've been robbed, if they've been raped, it's over. They're coming home. But if you don't know what's really happened to them, how can you really help them? Maybe they were a bully. Maybe they were the gang leader. Maybe they were the drug dealer. Doesn't matter. To be in jail for 10 years and sell drugs, to be in jail for 10 years and beat up people, to be in jail for 10 years and beat a boss, psychological trauma. The trauma doesn't escape anybody. If you are in an institution for any prolonged period of time, the term is institutionalized. It doesn't say, well, the guy who got beat up is worse off than the guy who did the beating. We are all in the same boat. So as loved ones, and you're watching us come home, I need you to understand that there are different dynamics that happen behind the wall. And none of those things have to be a death sentence. And a death sentence meaning you repeatedly go back. They can be helped, they can be healed, they can be prosperous, but it takes clear information for that to happen. What I had to do to fix my life, I had to sit in a room initially and tell the truth about who I was. I was black, I was a criminal, I was violent, I was angry, I was hurt, I was neglected, I was uneducated, I was a lot of things. I made a list of all the things that made up Andre. Then I started working on that list. And by the time it was ready for me to come home, I had done 8 years of counseling, 8 years of therapy, 8 years of struggling to tell the truth, because I had never told the truth before. That it was hard, it hurt me that we grew up poor. It hurt me that some of the things that I saw as a child, that I just waved them off. I'm grown now, I'm in the penitentiary, that don't matter anymore, but it does. So when your loved one's coming home, you need to not just be parades and balloons. It needs to be honest, straightforward, real conversations. And if you're the person that they love and they trust, your mom, your big sister, whoever you are, you need to sit them down and get to the truth. And say, this isn't about prying, this isn't about shame, this is about trying to help you stay free. Because the psychological hold of the penitentiary extends far beyond the reach of the wall. So we have to not just get them out physically, we have to get them out psychologically as well. Because there's a lot of hurt feelings attached to coming home from prison. And we just want to be mindful that this is real. So in this episode, we want to discuss what can we do to help you have honest conversations. So we have a checklist that can help you know what questions to ask. And then when you get this information, how are you going to process it? Okay, the person tells you, I've been selling drugs 10 years, Mom. Hey, Mom, I've been beating up people. Hey, Mom, I've had something horrible happen to me one night. How do you process that information and how do you get them help? Because one of the key things they're going to need when they come home, I don't care what their status was, is counseling. When I came home from prison, for the first 2.5 years straight, I was in counseling. Didn't miss a session. Because there's a lot of processing that needed to happen to help me transition successfully into society. One of the reasons I went to prison is I didn't know how to process my emotions. One of the reasons I suffered in prison, because I didn't know how to process my emotions. The main reason I came home from prison is because I learned how to process my emotions. 21 years I've been out of prison because I learned to respect and process my emotions. So we wanted to take this time to say, hey, how do we have honest dialogue? How do we have honest conversations about helping our loved ones transition? Because we are their number one go-to. So with the Cafe of Hope, we just want to help you make the transition as successful as possible. Welcome back. Welcome back. I appreciate you as always. Cafe of Hope, we want to focus on something different this segment. We talked about getting ready to transition out of prison for them as well as for you back in society. Well, what are one of the things that you can do to make sure that is successful and concrete? Dre, I heard you, but you said in one of your episodes before, how do you create a tangible plan to make that happen and not just conceptually? The most important thing you can do is write it down. You need to actually sit with your loved one and write out what that plan looks like. Not just take something that the prison put together in their reentry program or their initiatives that you had to fill out some forms. This is not a form. This is a conversation and a contract between you and them. Well, you're not really mandating what they need to do, but it's a discussion. So you need to sit down, whether it's in the visiting room, on a video visit, on the phone, and say, okay, what is the plan? Are you coming home to work? Are you coming home to go to school? Coming home to sit on the couch? What are you going to do about your baby's mother? What are you going to do about your kids? What are you going to do about employment? What are you going to do about your substance problem? What are you going to do about your anger problem? What are you going to do about your relationship with your dad? Write these things down. You get on the phone, and you might want to brainstorm them at first. And just write down all the issues, no particular order. Then you start saying, okay, issues with your dad, issues with your sister, situation with your baby's mother, situation with your ex-wife, situation with employment, situation with your old gang, whatever it is, start writing it down. Then say, okay, well, what are we going to do in this scenario? You're going to have to deal with your dad some kind of way. What's our outlet for that? You're going to have to deal with the dudes from the neighborhood because we can't afford to move to Kansas. We live here. So what are we going to do with that? Then what happens is you write it down, and you write down your solutions or your course of action to deal with each one of these things. So what happens is when your son or your daughter comes home and you see them, okay, we agreed that you're going to get up at 7 o'clock and do your meditation. We agreed that you're going to get up at 6 o'clock and go jogging. We agreed that you're going to find a job and go to work, even in the job thing. You got to do that. We agreed you're going to go to college and sign up come September or January. Whatever it is, it's not, I don't remember that, Mom, or I don't remember what you're talking about, girl. We wrote it down, and we each have a copy of it. And one of the first things you do when they walk out of that door is you take them to lunch, and you pull out that piece of paper and say, hey, let's go over this real quick to make sure we're on the same page. So 2 weeks in, 3 weeks in, you're holding them to what you agreed to, because I've seen moms where son's on the couch, he's, oh, Mom, I just did 20 years, I don't want to get off the couch. You don't want to press him. So how long do you leave him on the couch? How long of it is transition? How long of it is therapy? How long is it being lazy? How long is it transition and doing nothing? Or he's around the wrong people. Well, they just want to come show me love. What does that love look like? What did it cost you last time? What is it going to cost you this time? By not having it written down, it leaves doors open that they're going to walk through and most likely be unprepared for. By writing it down and putting something to it, an action step, then you can both be on the same page. And they will make mistakes. They will make bad choices. But it's clear and written down so you know when they're out of bounds. 80% of the problems with loved ones is you don't know when we're really about to do something dumb. But if we have our schedule and our outlines written down, you can actually monitor it and have real conversations. You cannot be afraid to have direct, real conversations. Their lives depend on it, and your mental health and your fortitude depends on it. I'm going to give you something that you're probably going to think is crazy. The number one person with the most information that helped me in my transition out was my parole officer. I was told my entire time the parole officer is the devil. Don't trust him, don't trust him, don't trust him. Every story I ever heard about a parole officer was negative. But you know who was telling me these stories? People who came back to prison. Every parole failure would tell me about the parole officer. All the parole success stories, I never saw them because they were still out in society. I only saw parole failures in prison. But let me tell you about the parole officer. I'm not saying they're all great people and they can be like the second coming, but they technically have the information of jobs, of counseling, of resources. You know what I'm saying? Everything you really need to know, they've been doing it for 10, 20 years. They've been through it 20,000 times, 20,000 people. There's nothing new about parole that they ain't seen. So by making a relationship as a family member with the parole officer, it can be extremely helpful in the transition, because who knows who hires ex-offenders? The parole officer. Who knows what the drug treatment programs are? The parole officer. Who knows who does, felon-friendly housing? The parole officer. But again, we have to get past the stigma of them being the devil. I'm not saying they're great people again, but they have the information. If you're only waiting to get information from people that you like, you're probably not going to get all the best information. So you need to, as a loved one, not just let your son or daughter go to the parole officer by themselves. You too need to meet the parole officer, because they have the ability to take your child out of society again and put them back in prison. And the less relationships they have with you, the more apt they are to do it. So when there's a discrepancy between your son and the parole office and there's no relationship at all, it's easier to yank them. But if the parole officer has a relationship with the mom or the sister or the dad, they will opt to call you, hey, do you know this is going the wrong way? Do you know what's going on here? But if there's no relationship, there's no call. The only call you get is they're back in central booking because the PO sent them back, and you're going to get the mommy version. You might not get the real version. So make the relationships that matter. And you have churches. My mom went to church, love her for it, glad it go well. I'm not a church guy in the sense of I want to sit in church 7 days a week and listen to people pray and sing. So your faith is great. Your prayers worked. But how do you introduce me into the system of religion? Now, I don't have to, again, make the altar call, you know what I'm saying? So dragging me, hoping I hear the message that you hear is different. Nothing against the gospel. I got saved June 12th, 1999 at 7 p.m. I believe, I get it. But what happens is your interpretation of a message is based on who you are. So you're listening most likely to a male preacher give a sermon that touches you. I don't hear a man speaking the same way you hear him because I'm not a female. So I hear it differently. And I judge and scrutinize him differently than you will. So you have to be mindful. It's not just hear this message and you get it the way I got it. No. We have our own interpretations. The church and religious institutions can be extremely helpful. You just have to be mindful how you introduce them to us, because they're there as a backdrop and a service that can be, above and beyond there. Shouldn't be scared of us. They should be open to help us. They should be community-based. But again, you have to be mindful. Are you in a giant church or in a small church? And just, again, the key thing I want you to take away from this, if it's going to be the church, parole officer, relationships, jobs, laying on the couch for how many hours a day, write it down. You both have copies. You can both have real conversations. There's a gentleman who told me one time, success is not possible as long as the unspoken is unsaid. So we have to get past being fearful of hurting people's feelings or looking out of place and having the real conversations that matter, because our lives depend on it. So I will see you in the next segment, and until then, be good. Welcome back to the Cafe of Hope. As always, I'm your host, Andre Norman. And to wrap up today's episode, I want to go over some of the questions I often get. Andre, how did you stay out of jail 21 years? Andre, how did you manage to not get arrested? And Andre, how did you avoid your old neighborhood? Andre, there's thousands of questions that come at me from different relatives and different people I know. Andre, how do you get this person to do that or buy into this? How do you get them to go to church? And this is the first thing. You can't make anybody do anything. The person has to be willing. So there's a thing, they always say, you can't help somebody who doesn't want to be helped. That's wrong. It's dead wrong. I believe there's just a step before that, and that's getting them ready to be wanting help. So what I specialize in is getting people ready to want help. So how did I stay out of prison for 21 years? One of the first things I did is I went to counseling. I love my family. I love my mom, I love my sisters, I love my brothers, I love my dad, I love everybody. I needed professional help. So I used to go to counseling. Shout out to Sister Wendy. Every week I went to counseling with Sister Wendy, and I sat on that couch and I told the truth about my feelings. I told the truth on how I was hurt by different things and how I saw different things. I could tell her things that happened in prison, I saw in prison, I might not want to tell my mom. So I had honest conversations with somebody who understood how to process my emotions and give it back to me so I could process it. So counseling was immense. That was one of the strongest things that I did. The second thing that I did that was really helpful was I had a plan. We had a written down plan about what Andre was going to do. Did I stick to it 100%? No. But I had a plan, and I stick to that plan, and I stuck to that plan, and I stuck to that plan, and I held to that plan as much as I could. And having it written down makes all the difference in the world, because when you get emotional because things go bad, things go wrong, you get all upset, you get out of sorts, and it's just a bad day. And by having a written down plan, it made a difference. Third, I got mentors. Mentors are people that are consistent, have character, have courage, have the capacity to actually help me process my life. And again, these mentors aren't my dad. They aren't big brothers. They aren't like OGs. They're just people who are stable, who have great lives that I wanted to be. And people say, well, you need to go get him a black guy who's been in prison, who turned his life around. No, it's not true. My number one mentor is Orthodox Jewish rabbi. And he's my mentor because he cared about me. He had the courage to walk me through the truth. He had the capacity to handle my issues. He was consistent. He had character. He had all the things that I needed. I didn't need to learn how to be a criminal or tough. I didn't need to learn how to steal a car or punch somebody. I need to learn how to show up for my family. I need to learn how to show up for myself. I need to learn how to be honest. And that's what this man taught me. So don't just go hunting for black men or looking for Spanish men or white men who look like your child. Look at the characteristics of the person you're referring them to. And if you can't, if he happened to be black, that'd have been great. But he wasn't. And that's okay too. So look for people of character and structure that guide and be mentors for your children. And don't get in the way and try to micromanage the relationship. Let them do what they are capable of doing, being honest, transformative people that can guide your child and your loved one to a better space. I've had situations where I've had meltdowns, and I was like, yo, this is crazy. And I called my mentor. He said, where are you? I said, I'm at the wrong place. I'm in the wrong place at the wrong time looking for a place to park. Because I was in my car driving, I was just highly upset, and I wanted to hurt somebody. He said, where are you? I said, I'm at the wrong place at the wrong time. I'm just looking for a place to park. Because once I park my car, whoever's there is going to have a problem out of me. And he talked me through it. I've had tons of times. I want you to think my life is, I've meltdowns and flare-ups, and I called my mentor. And what made me able to call my mentor is I talked to him when I wasn't flaring up. I talked to him on a consistent basis, so I felt comfortable calling then. Don't be upset that you're not the person they call. Just be happy that they're calling somebody. So help put those somebodies in place so they can have that person to reach out to. This is important. This is extremely important. It takes a community effort. There are a lot of agencies that actually help people. There are some agencies that don't. Don't get stuck on the ones that don't help people. Don't get stuck on the ones that their agenda doesn't line up with your agenda. Find the people who are willing to help you and give them the opportunity. I'm saying give them the chance to do what they sign up to do. Don't just think, oh, this agency said X, so I'm going to believe it. They have nice flyers, they have nice everything. Don't get stuck on flyers and promises. Look for a track record. Look for success stories. Look for people who've actually gotten it done. And one of the biggest things I've run into is parents feel embarrassed that their child's been locked up. It's okay. We want to get them not to be locked up again. My mom's not happy I went to jail, but she's happy that I've been home for 21 years. And I'm able to help my brother, little brother, stay out. I'm saying, even though we still don't get along, we bump heads all the time, but he's still my little brother. And on the strength of me and him and my mom, I'm always going to look out. So we're here for each other. You don't have to have this close-knit family structure to make it, but you need a designated plan, you need mentors, and you need to have a goal. What is the goal? So if you say, Dre, what is your goal? My goal now is to get appointed by the President of the United States to help fix the prison system. Help your child pick a goal. Because if your child doesn't have a goal, they're going no place fast. And even if the goal may not be attainable in the first 5 years, that's fine. They need to have a goal, but let's back it all the way back up. Conversations, honesty, transparency. You're the one they love. You're the one who loves them. You're the one that's going to facilitate this conversation. So let's suggest counseling. Let's suggest a written plan. And let's suggest mentoring. And those are 3 key things that'll help your loved one stay out, not just 21 years, but for the rest of their lives. Reach out to us at the Cafe of Hope and let us know what we can do to be helpful, because that's what we're here for. And until we hear from you, know that we're here for you. When my mother was struggling to find help for me as a young man, there was nobody who understood our problems and I could relate to. So after many failed attempts, I ended up in prison. My mother's sense of failure, shame, and stress were real. The worst part was she went through it alone. She was alone in trying to keep me out of prison. She was alone in navigating the prison system. And she was also alone trying to help me re-enter post my release. The Cafe of Hope was created so you don't have to go this journey alone. I know firsthand by real experiences what you're facing and you're feeling. We are here for you. I wish I could have created the Cafe of Hope for my mother back when she needed it, but I guess it was meant for us to go through this test so we can bring you our testimony. Thank you for allowing us to help support your family.